welcome to Two Brothers Play a Game. I'm Chris,
And I'm Josh.
and I guess we're switching it up a little bit. This is not our usual intro.
Yeah,
We
like
run.
I don't think you could cold open after you've introduced the podcast. But you know what? Let's go for it anyway. It's a
All
busy
right.
week. It's a busy time. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But let's just go straight into it. We are talking about video game movies again, and to cold open this already introduced podcast, let's go to like what are some of your favorite video game movies, and like how would you give them like a one sentence review? Let's go back and forth. You want to start with one?
Sure. So we've been doing that. We were mixing it up. We have all kinds of fun this week. As we record.
Oh, I guess there's
Favorite.
no reason to beat around the bush. Chris is getting married next week, and
I,
he's stressed getting married. I guess I'm just secondhand stressed or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's his
that probably
excuse,
is a thing.
and I'm just
I
gonna
don't know.
ride
Yeah.
on it as well. So, what's your
Yeah.
first? What's your first thing?
And we both chose to record this podcast while all this is going on.
We,
So
both of
there
our
we go.
fans, we owe it to him, Chris.
We do, I guess. So okay, so movies. I I am thinking through. You sent me a list, and that was actually a really good, refreshing list because I have forgotten how many of those are movie or video game movies,
Hmm.
and I saw a lot more than I thought. I will start and say because when you first brought it up, Doom was one that has always stuck in my mind.
Uh-huh.
Not completely, but bits and pieces. The thing that I like the most is it gave a good portrayal of a first person shooter at one point
Ah,
in the movie. And I thought that was really, really cool and really, really good to have that for the video game movie. So that alone, I was about to say makes it worth seeing the movie. Maybe not, but it was really fun in that way. Like I think they just had a lot of fun with it in that
nice.
regard. So I think it's worth seeing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that that was a very long one run-on sentence review, but Doom, not bad. That's Dwayne the Rock Johnson, right?
There we go. And Carl Urban, not Keith Urban. Keith Urban is an artist, is a musical artist. Carl Urban, uh,
Sure,
McCoy in the new Star Trek movies.
sure.
He was a writer of Rohan. That guy.
So I'll do one. I've got Sonic the Hedgehog, the first one.
Uh
The
huh.
movie, my one sentence review is the
Uh huh.
movie is fun enough, but I didn't see the appeal enough to watch the sequel.
Okay.
You got
I
a second one?
I do. I'm gonna pick Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
Uh-huh.
Deep and emotional and gorgeous.
Okay.
That's a
I
sentence. That I know there's no
going way
nouns
shorter
or
on the
anything, but
sentences now.
it is.
That's okay, because I also picked that one, and I said it's
Oh,
a very over-the-top Final Fantasy style story, and it's probably only for the Final Fantasy super fans. Uh,
okay.
it's fine, I enjoyed it as a Final Fantasy fan. Back to you.
Oh, I'm gonna pick Detective Pikachu.
Ah,
To look through the list. It's probably is that one that you picked also?
I did as well. Go ahead first.
I thought it was very charming, very funny, and did a good job of giving some origins to the Pokemon in a new way.
Nice.
That is my
Um,
sentence.
let's see. I said it is really fun seeing the Pokemon out as a part of society, just kind of doing their day to day outside of battling in the Pokemon games. And the plot is very strange, not in a bad way, just in a wow, that was a wild story. But it's super fun, and big thumbs up for Detective Pikachu. You have a fourth?
I am gonna go with because I have. seen it, and it needs to be commented on. Is not the new Super Mario Brothers movie, the live action old one,
Uh-huh.
Super Mario Brothers. I think out of all of the video game movies I have seen, it is the worst adaptation, possibly the worst adaptation to ever be made for a video game movie. It just did not fit almost anything, except that they go through pipes. That's maybe about the only thing that was like true to the video game.
Yeah, that was a wild one. I always hear of all these strange stories about that movie, and that might be one of the reasons that Nintendo is so precious with their characters, because the one time they gave somebody
I,
permission to do Mario, it went really bad. It went
I
really
did.
strange and bad.
I actually heard supposedly that is the reason why.
Makes a
That
lot of sense.
yeah, it just did so bad, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
So
I
why
heard
they
there were
did it that
budget
way? Yeah,
issues and like directors changing at the
yeah,
last minute, just like things went wrong and also probably never should have been greenlit in the first place. But hey,
yeah.
we have this interesting artifact in our history, our video game history at least. My last one sentence review is for Uncharted. It's incredibly fun, and
Oh,
I'd really like to
okay.
see a sequel personally. That was
Oh,
probably like of the ones I've talked about, that's the one I'd say go see, even though it got really
oh,
kind of dismissed by critics as just like
yeah,
it's not Indiana Jones, but I'm like, that's okay.
yeah,
Nothing is Indiana
yeah.
Jones except Indiana
Yeah.
Jones.
I did not see that one. I was honestly not planning on seeing it in the theaters, but I just still haven't seen it on streaming either. So I will have to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think it's on
Okay.
Netflix, and I watched it on streaming, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
It's not a amazing movie, but you're gonna have fun watching it, I think.
I mean, video game movies aren't generally that. I'm sorry, all you video game movie makers, but usually they're not, award-winning productions. So
Yeah, yeah, we're hopefully we'll have one more to talk about, and we'll see if that one takes the cake. Did you have any last thoughts on video game movies before we move on to introducing our podcast, which is the next thing in my notes?
that was just tossed out the window. No other thoughts. I'm sure we can come back to this because there's many other video game movies that we probably could both see. Because I did see Sonic too. I
Good.
did.
Sonic 2, good.
Well, we'll have to save it for another time.
Okay, okay. Stay tuned for whenever the next video game movie comes out, and we talk about this again. So welcome to Two Brothers Play a Game. We already went over this. You know who he is. You know who I
Our
am.
brains are working a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the ball rolling now. And this is a podcast where we two brothers play a game we found on sale for Nintendo Switch. We do a fun
Mhm.
segment in the front half of the podcast to try to warm up a little bit when our brains are a little squishy. And then we discuss and review the game of the month in the back half of the show. And this month it is Tales of Iron. Um, I don't know
Yeah.
where our theme songs fit into that, so hopefully you'll find a place for it.
Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Two brothers play a game. Then they will rate that game.
I had
Let's
to
just
know.
keep going. And
Okay.
the thing that spurred our quote unquote cold open on movies is we're going to talk about the Gran Turismo movie in our opening segment today.
Mhm.
Chris, you not only saw the movie, you saw an early screener of the movie. You want to take it from here and tell us a little bit about it?
Did. Yeah, I did. It was a bit of a surprise, but I was glad it was that, and I liked it quite a bit. I was purposely leaving that out of our list that we just did, knowing I was going to comment on it because it is just premiered in theaters about a week ago, I think, a couple weeks ago, something like that. And it's interesting. It's not exactly a video game adaptation. It's a very different type of video game movie because it it is based on Gran Turismo, but it's actually based on something that happened in real life from Gran Turismo,
Hmm.
and tells that story. So there's a and this is not spoiling it. I mean, this is the plot, and you
Right.
could look up this on Wikipedia. I think for
A
any listener who's like, "What
semi-historical
is he
event that
doing?"
happened.
Yeah. So it's it's like the Titanic. You can look at you can see the movie,
Wait,
but
I haven't seen that one yet.
like you can look up. No, well, spoiler: the ship breaks apart and sinks.
Oh
Sorry,
man. Oh well.
it's yeah.
I'm sure
If you
everyone
were
will make it
wondering,
out okay by the end though.
of course, especially the band. So Gran Turismo um, is about a kid that um, I mean he's about as close to being like a professional Gran Turismo player, and Sony actually holds a contest to find new race car drivers from these like professional video game players,
Hmm.
and this kid um, competes, and I won't say more, but it might be a little obvious a little bit of what happens to him because it follows him for the movie.
Uh-huh.
So, um, but like even if I were going into it like knowing a lot of that, it just was a really entertaining movie. I mean, it's a race car movie too. I think that's what's funny. It's not it's video game because a video game is a racing game, but like this is very much a racing movie compared to other video game ones. But I remember hearing about this a long time ago that they were making a movie, and I'm like, how would you make a
Right.
movie about this that's not Fast and Furious? It's a
Right, right,
video,
right.
like it's a video game movie, and this is how you do it. Like it's based on that true story, but it was very entertaining, very suspenseful because there's a lot of things that happen in his life
Hmm.
um, with it. Actually, very emotional. There was actually a really good emotional part with him as well. So they did a really good job, and I was very surprised. And it has Orlando Bloom,
Right.
and
David Harbour,
I
I
don't
think
know
it's
the
called.
actor's name. That's Hopper in Stranger Things. I
I think
forgot
that's
his name.
David Harbour, who plays the mentor, driving
Hopper.
mentor. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. There we go.
Um,
Yeah.
I have not seen the movie, but I did read up on it quite a bit, so I would be somewhat prepared for this conversation. In the movie, I'm not sure what happened in reality exactly, but in the movie, it seems that
Mhm.
Nissan, an executive at Nissan, kind of does this as is it a promotional stunt, or does he really think that video game players would be great drivers?
So they debate it. It
Hmm.
was or that's actually a big driving point of the movie is that debate on should he really be racing or not,
Hmm.
and is he capable of doing it. And but I will give like part of the argument because I mean we're a video game podcast. We know what Gran Turismo is like. It's probably the most realistic racing game, if not one of.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the argument is like it's such a realistic racing game. If you really have the whole setup to like drive,
Right.
then you should be able to translate that into real racing.
Hmm.
But that's kind of the argument is like, can you like is this actually safe? What does it take? The other thing I will say with that too, to expand on it, it was fascinating to see what it takes to actually be a race car driver as well. Like they really go kind of like in behind the scenes of what it takes, and I had no idea. It was very interesting. Yeah.
Um, One thing that wanted to know about the movie is when I see people in sitcoms and whatnot playing video games, it's always more of a joke. You know, they don't seem to actually know how to handle a controller and things like that, which is fine. It's a comedy.
Yeah.
Does this movie seem to actually understand how to play video games and what playing video games is like, or is it also sort of an awkward, almost cheesy part of the movie?
No, it is very much giving credit to what video games are like now, and what it I guess what it takes to play a video game too. That there's they're much more advanced now, as we know, as other people know, and especially ones that will respond more realistically. So I doubt they would ever do like a Nintendo Switch or like a Wii, like Wii Bowling the movie or something, and like try to argue with like the same thing, because that doesn't quite translate. But I think some people have like thought through bowling a little bit better because of Wii Bowling. I'd like to
Right,
think. So this does a much better translation, or gives much more credit, and shows the realism of Gran Turismo in a
right.
good
I
way.
mean,
Yeah.
from Wii built bowling, I did learn that if a bowling ball is coming at me, I need to jump in the air and spin around. So, I mean, it's not completely
And everybody else too.
unrealistic. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's just a part of bowling culture, I'm pretty sure.
Mhm.
Um, I heard that the acting was one of the probably top elements in this film, especially with Orlando Bloom and David Harbour. And then the protagonist is Archie Mendique. I'm probably
Yeah.
mispronouncing his last name. Apologies, Archie. What do you think of that?
So I had sometimes a little bit of a problem with Orlando Bloom,
Uh huh.
but he did a great job. David Harbour.
Uh
I'm just gonna say Hopper. Hopper did a great job.
huh. Okay.
Um, actually, I really liked Hopper in as like the coach role, and he um, brought depth. He brought a good range of emotion for a lot of different stuff going on.
Hmm.
Um, I I think he carried it most of all, even though he wasn't supposed to. Um, but I think that the main protagonist, and I apologize to you for not knowing the actor's name. He did a great job. Um, he maybe didn't carry some of the scenes that he needed to carry, but it
Hmm.
didn't. That's not saying that it like really took away that much. I think it was still. I would put it this way, like I think it comes close to Oscar winning acting,
Uh
but
huh.
it didn't quite get there for some of them, but
Gotcha.
it came close. Yeah.
How about the racing action? You know, it's important in a Gran Turismo game. How did the cars look going around the track and whatnot?
That was really fun. That was really awesome. And I like racing movies. I tend to, or car chase movies even. So this did a lot of it, and it did a great job with it.
Nice.
I don't want to say a lot because it would spoil some things,
Sure.
but um, oh, and a fun thing, they reveal this in the credits,
Uh huh.
and then I think it's been said a lot in like the promotional stuff. The real guy
Uh huh.
um, did all the stunt driving,
Oh, that's fun.
so they actually used him. Yeah,
So
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 he got
he's
to
actually in the
consult
movie
and try
playing
too.
himself. Oh,
Yeah,
that's fun. Huh.
yeah.
Um,
So it's real racing. Yeah, yeah.
One complaint I heard a little bit about the movie is that it's pretty blatant and frequent in its product placements of especially PlayStation and Nissan. How did you think? Was it in your face or a little more
Well,
subtle?
no, because I mean the whole movie. I think that's a misunderstanding then of what racing is, because racing is all
This
like
is
product
fair,
placement pretty much.
right?
Like all the racers, all the cars are sponsored, and they've got tons of the sponsorship stuff on their cars. So that's really funny to me to say that's in your face. It's like, apparently you don't watch any racing. That's all it is. And then, I mean, the whole movie is, I mean, it's based on a PlayStation game.
Right.
So, you
I
know, like if it were trying to make a plot out of the game itself, and they kept referencing Sony somehow, one that would be way too weirdly meta, and I think it would be disruptive. But two, that would be in your face. But because this is actually, you know, based on an actual contest that Sony PlayStation held, and it's about having like a Sony PlayStation game and game player, like it's not in your face. That's just part of the movie. So that's a really funny criticism to me.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
they didn't specify that I remember from reading, but in my mind, I'm kind of picturing somebody drinking a Budweiser, and then they turn the label to the camera and they hold it up, and you
Yeah.
get a quick close up on it and see the little sweat dripping down the side to make it seem all fresh and crisp and refreshing. Like that's kind of what I think of. Like that doesn't
Mhm.
really have a place in the movie where you're like, this is truly a commercial. But obviously, you're going to have sponsored names, and PlayStation and
Mhm.
Nissan are going to have their names all over the place. But if it's in the
Yeah.
background, it's a little more subtle. It doesn't bother me as much as if there's a literal commercial in the middle of my movie.
Yeah, it's not disruptive. It's not like all of it makes sense because again, it's just those are the cars, that is the game, and they are the ones that are running whatever was happening in real life. So
Hmm.
to me, like it never felt like that. It just was like, oh, this is actually how I would think everything is. Because I mean, again, too. So even if it was obvious, like I don't think it matters that much because they like the whole reason for Sony PlayStation even doing the contest from what I understand, I mean, it was to promote their game. It was to
Right,
promote the PlayStation.
right,
So they're going to be doing that in real life too. So then, if they're doing it in real life and you translate it to the movie, I think it just works. Like that's just what I would expect to have
right,
happen. I mean, Nissan maybe a little more, but again, that's it's a racing movie, so it's their cars.
right.
So they're gonna have them all over too. So that's really funny to me. Like it's not. Yeah, if it were a different type of movie, then yes, that would all of those would be way too in your face. But this is like it's exactly what the movie's about. Like that is the plot of the movie. It's basically product placement. Like
Fair enough. Fair
it's
enough.
yeah.
So
And
from
the guy that races cars, that guy too. It's about him, Nelson. It's
So for this last question I had, let's just give it a kind of a. We'll put 3 minutes on the clock because this might include some
okay.
minor spoilers, but we'll try to avoid as many as possible.
Okay.
So if you don't want
Maybe I'll
any
bleep them all or
spoilers on the
something, you know.
Gran Turismo movie, go ahead and skip 3 minutes right now.
Ooh. Okay.
And one thing I wanted to talk about, and something that came up in the articles I was reading, is they kind of rearrange history a little bit to insert this a real life car crash that happened that accidentally killed at least one or more bystanders at the race. And then some people felt it was kind of callous to turn that into a growing moment for the main character who had to overcome this accident that happens when real people died when this happened in real life. And not only that, but they are using it, they are moving it in the story for the sake of storytelling. What do you think of that?
I because it was an accident,
Hmm.
I I don't I didn't feel like it was callous and they presented it I think really well to not be callous because um the the driver he was really upset. So I mean in the fact that he did all the stunt driving, I mean he probably consulted and they probably got to talk to him about what it was like. So he really was devastated. and I think if they had showed that any other way, like if they had shown it quicker, or like if he had jumped right into the growth moment for it,
Hmm.
then that would have been really callous. But I actually think they handled it really well,
Okay.
and and Hopper helped with that too. I think they did a great job with him and his role in all of that also. So yeah, but
Nice.
I mean it's an accident. It like it's hard to not address things like that and comment on it in some way because it's an event in all their lives. Maybe probably brushing up on time. Maybe they could have like at least like given the names or something, or done some kind of tribute for the victims. That maybe would have helped. I don't know, but
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It seems like a kind of messy thing they walked into.
mhm.
That is a little troubling, though. Also, was a real event that did happen to this
Yeah.
driver. Um, so I guess we'll just have to leave it there. That's in the movie. If that upsets you, maybe it's not the movie for you. But
Mhm.
it is also kind of nice to see what the critics have to say, and then hear just kind of a everyday moviegoer's opinion of it. Because not, it is one thing to have to develop that critical nature to write about things. It's another to
Mhm.
just go to the movies. When you go to Rotten Tomatoes, sometimes critics give it a 60 and audiences give it a 90, and that's just kind of the nature of the business.
I will put it this way. I mean, I saw it in
Hmm.
theaters, and I've been thinking about it. I will probably see it again at least once at some point.
Nice.
You know, like
I
once again, it was a really entertaining movie. Yeah.
I think I'd like to see it as well. When I get a chance at some point, maybe not in theaters, but at some point. So
Mhm.
you wanna give this a rating? I have not seen it, so I can't join you in that. But one thumb up, two thumbs up. What would you give it?
I would give it two thumbs up.
Nice.
Yeah, it it very much deserves two thumbs up. Yeah.
And then the follow-up question: You've seen this, you've seen and talked about Mario and all the other video games movie we talked about. If we were going to
Hmm.
give a recommendation to see one video game movie, which one would you
Ooh,
pick right now?
wow. They are very different.
Uh-huh. Or any other. It doesn't have to
uh,
be one of those two.
for just an average,
Hmm.
a more average gamer
Yeah, well, I mean,
kind of
just a movie
audience,
for people to see that probably has a gamer in mind.
I would actually say Super Mario Brothers, and I
Okay.
think it's just because there's the intense parts of the of Gran Turismo,
Hmm.
like we were talking about, and it's more grounded in reality. So it's a little bit of a weird video game movie because it is and it isn't. So like if you're going to see a video game movie, you just want
Hmm.
something that kind of entertainment. I'd say Super Mario Brothers because it's just enjoyable. It's just fun. But yeah, that's a hard one because it is a little bit different. But yeah.
I would probably go with having still not seen Mario and not seen Gran Turismo yet. I think I'd probably go with Uncharted. I just really had a fun time with that movie. It requires you to know nothing about the Uncharted video game, so go and enjoy it if you want to. And then maybe a honorable mention, runner up for Detective Pikachu. That was a lot of fun as well. So let us get on to the main topic now of Tales of Iron.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I should describe this one since I put a lot of the A segment on you to describe Gran Turismo. Tales of Iron is a side-scrolling action RPG with a very rich story, absolutely gorgeous visuals, and a very challenging and pretty fast-paced combat. You're going to play as a small rat named Redgi, who is preparing to face his much larger brother in combat to try to prove that he is worthy of his father's crown, despite his diminutive size. He almost looks like a mouse compared to his father and brothers that are, proper big rats, about twice his size. So that's kind of the setting that we start the game in, and what's going on in the game. Let's jump into the presentation, which I absolutely adored. What did you think about the various elements of the presentation for Tales of Iron?
I'll say real quick, you did not say also what's going on in the kingdom is that there are frogs that the rats
Yes.
have defeated at one point too.
Yes,
But
there was a war
yeah.
that Redgi's father fought against the frogs. Now, these are literal rats and literal frogs.
Hmm.
And Redgi's father, the king, rose to the occasion and saved the kingdom from the frogs. And that is now it is a time of peace when we start the game, though.
Hmm.
Uh, you can imagine the frogs are
What
going to
you
be
say?
showing up pretty soon, just
Yeah.
based on the fact that this is an action RPG. Not this is about Redkey learning to farm or anything like that. He's going to be picking up a sword because he needs to fight some frogs and maybe some other creatures along the way. But yes, the rats versus the frogs is the um, primary antagonist of this game. Back to
Hmm.
presentation. What do you think?
But yeah, presentation. I really like the visuals. Like you were saying, it has very rich visuals, and that's what I was noticing right away. It's got the kind of storybook illustration
Hmm.
art style, which is very interesting to have in a game, and it did a good job of doing a sort of balance of like what's just more visual and what is actual like parts of the game, if that makes sense. Characters or items or things like that. But I liked how it all kind of just seamlessly was put together in that
Hmm.
way.
Yeah, this is a side-scrolling game, and but they do a lot with the environments to give those foreground, background environments to give it a more sense of depth. I loved how all of the various animals were developed, and it wasn't just like all rats look the same. There was a wide variety of rats and frogs, and I believe eventually you encounter moles, and then there's tons of little bug creatures as well. The
Hmm.
rats seem to farm the bugs for bug juice, which is their healing, restoring item.
Yeah.
So that is there's definitely a little bit of grossness to this game and a little bit of blood, well, a fair amount of blood and gore. This is a kind of a darker, gritty medieval world. There's some dark tones to it to really emphasize that, and the, uh, the the rats and frogs are both vicious fighters, so expect some very dramatic killing blows and things like that. I think it looks fantastic, but probably something to be aware of if that's not your thing.
Hmm.
Um, I I just adored it. Did you enjoy the way the animals talk to each other? So you do have a fully voiced narrator, but you also have the animals will talk to each other, but they only talk in like little peeps and kind of slide whistle recorder type
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah. I I liked it because, but I'm saying that with an asterisk, which I'll get
Hmm.
to. I liked it because it's unique, and you don't, gosh, you don't really have that in games. Like but it fit. Like it's their language,
Hmm.
and it felt like rats talking. So I
Hmm.
really liked that they had that as their voices. The asterisk part is I kind of wish that there's a little bit of a better way of communicating because they still did with like the word bubbles and the illustrations within the word bubbles kind of thing, but
Hmm.
sometimes it just was not quite enough. And the narrator was narrating,
Right.
not really giving instruction. So sometimes the slide whistles weren't really indicating certain things, and I wish that they could have done something a little bit more with that communication. Is the only thing.
I was pretty okay with it because yeah, they communicate with just these little peepy musical notes and things like that, which to me was very endearing. And I feel like, especially with the narrator and that book aspect of this game, they were probably kind of
Mhm.
fans of the Redwall books or things like that, and might have a fondness for the idea of, knights and kings and queens that are animals, which is a surprisingly cute thing to put in a game that is otherwise very gritty. But it's fun. I enjoyed it. And to complement the musical notes that they play to speak, they'll have little pictorial images, a right arrow and the throne, and that means, go talk to the king, go visit the throne room or something like that. But it's not always super clear. The narrator sometimes tells you what to do. But I was mostly okay with it because between the narrator telling you and interpreting the picto language, there's also a map that will have little indicators on it. So between those three things, you generally knew what you were supposed to do, even though sometimes you had to poke around for a second or open the map to confirm where you're supposed to go next.
Mhm.
I thought it was a nice kind of workaround so they could be cutesy while also being storybook, while also communicating to the player what needed to be communicated fairly well. Any other thoughts on presentation before moving on to gameplay?
No, yeah, we can move on.
So sadly for me, the gameplay is where I struggled a lot with this game. I loved the presentation absolutely, but the gameplay really rubbed me the wrong way.
Mhm.
One thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you had this problem, is I believe originally when the game came out, there was only one difficulty setting. What is the normal difficulty for this
Mm.
game? Tales of Iron mode. Um, Eventually, by the time we got around to it, they had added two more difficulties. Um, but Tales of Iron mode, the recommended one that I started with, is incredibly hard. Most enemies, just kind of everyday mundane enemies you might run into as you explore, can knock you down to 1 HP in just a couple hits. And it's fairly easy to get hit by the first attack in a combo and then be stuck, unable to block or dodge out of the way before the second attack hits
Mhm.
and puts you down at 1 HP. So you're always just about to die when you're playing in Tales of Iron mode, unless you memorize every single combat, or every single, enemy type and their routines, which is something that defines a Souls-like game like this, but something that I found very frustrating. And that was just compounded by the fact that they don't let you change the difficulty once you start the game. So I was about an hour into Tales of Iron mode when I
No.
got to this boss that it wasn't fun anymore. I was getting hit by this giant frog. I tried it about a dozen times, and running my head against a wall for a game is just not something that I'm into. Again, maybe that's the thing that the Souls like game players will find appealing about this game, but it wasn't for me, and I couldn't decrease the difficulty, so I had to start the game over to lower the difficulty down a notch, and that really was a big turnoff to me for this game.
Mhm.
Did you start with a lower difficulty, or what was your experience with the difficulty of the game?
I think I did, but even still, I was running into the same thing. I mean, I could take more hits, but
Hmm.
nothing else with the gameplay really changed, and I think that was what was hard too. It and I felt like there were some things with the moves that you're supposed to do. I mean, at least it gives you warnings, right? Of
Hmm.
like what move they're gonna do, but you have to time it right. I felt like sometimes I would do a timing that I would repeat that same timing and it wouldn't work the second
Hmm.
time, like and so it didn't feel all that consistent, and that was my problem too. So it was, yeah, I I would be facing like the same enemies at least like 3 times before passing them. I think on average it was 3 times. Like dying the first 2 times and then running back. But some of them, yeah, it took me a long time. So I didn't get too far. But I
Hmm.
know, surprise, surprise, for any of our games review, I think I've only completed one game ever. But um, yeah, I kind of reached a point where I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna even come close to finishing this like in the time. Yeah,
It,
it's
it's
hard.
not. a particularly long game, but when you are getting those setback after setback, it just
Hmm.
becomes a chore of, do I want to do this? And
Hmm.
that seems to have a ton of appeal for the people that love Dark Souls. I at least in the way it was expressed in this particular game, it wasn't fun for me. One thing I found very frustrating is when I downgraded to what's called fairy tale mode, the easy difficulty. It did get a lot easier than Tales of Iron mode. However, it also took a lot of the tension out that the game was supposed to have. Like, I almost wish there was a
Hmm.
difficulty in between Fairy Tale and Tales of Iron because I liked some of the challenge. I just didn't want quite as much where I was getting two shot by the big enemies and things like that. And it feels like it got 3 or 4 times easier when I only wanted it to get 1 or 2 times easier.
Okay.
But you know,
I wonder. Yeah, I'm trying to think which one I did. Maybe I didn't. I thought there were three settings, but I
there
must have done
were
Tales of Iron then. Oh, there
because
were three settings.
Tales of Iron was the normal difficulty, and then there was a super hardcore one above that as well. So there
Oh,
were 3 difficulties. Tales of Iron,
okay.
the what I would call hard mode, was the normal middle difficulty, and then
Oh,
there was an
then I
extreme
was doing
difficulty
Tales
to
of
the right.
Iron.
It's
Yeah,
tough. Yeah, I was dying a
yeah.
lot, and
That
uh,
explains it. Why I was. Yeah.
yes. Um, So unfortunately, kind of like what you were talking about with the timing didn't seem the same or consistent. I found the game very sluggish, and I
Hmm.
found like I could see, oh, this is making that attack, so I need to have my shield up now, or oh no, he's gonna jump on me real quick. I need to dodge out of the way, and I would hit the buttons, but because I was already in an attack animation or something like that, it wasn't responding, and so I would get hit. Like I was
Hmm.
already committed to my attack, so I couldn't get out of it, which again, makes some sense for a Souls-like game, but then it was kind of contradicted by the fact that, okay, so you're trying to be more realistic. I'm swinging my sword. I can't raise my shield at the same time because of that kind of gritty realism, but I can drop my shield and pull out a two-handed weapon, and then drop my two-handed weapon and pull out a crossbow, fire the crossbow, reload it instantly, go back to my sword and shield. Like I did enjoy that kind of dynamic switching between weapons that eventually became part of the game as you played a little bit further, but also, why couldn't I raise my shield really quickly to get a block in? That would have felt
Yeah.
good to me to be able to respond quickly, and instead it was a very sluggish, slow-going
Hmm.
response, which again, just not for me. I don't understand it, I guess. Um,
And I would agree that that was the difficulty that I was finding with it too. Yeah. Yeah.
one of my tiny gripes that I don't know if you ran into was you take fall damage very easily in this game. You're a rat, and you could probably fall um, maybe a little more than your body height and not take damage, which again, kind of realistic. But in a side-scrolling game, there's a ton of verticality, so that means I need to go take the ladder over and over and over again to avoid taking fall damage, and it's
Hmm.
just slowing me down for no real reason. Like, okay, we've made a more realistic game. Yes, if you drop a rat 3 feet or whatever, 3 body lengths or whatever, it's probably not going, it's going to twist its ankle or be hurt in some way. But also, I'm playing a video game. I just want to go a little faster and jump down to the level that isn't
Hmm.
that far below me, in video game terms. So please let me. That would be nice.
Hmm. I found
Um,
that out the hard way, and then I just went, "Fine,
yeah,
I'll have to do ladders."
yeah. I found that out
Yeah.
the hard way over and over again when I kept misjudging how far I could fall without getting hurt. Um, Also, did you get to the point where you had to do the side quests? Okay.
No,
So after
I.
after uh-huh,
Oh no, I think I reached the big giant frog that you were talking about at first, but I didn't beat him.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first big giant frog. So if you've seen a big giant frog, that's probably the one that got me a bunch too. Um, it after a little whiles after, it's kind of a linear quest for a little while to an attack happens on the kingdom, everything's in chaos. It's kind of cool visually because you go from this prosperous rat kingdom to this thing that has just been overrun as a war has just passed through the land effectively. And you have to go and kind of make sense of this chaos, kind of bring order back to the rat kingdom. And after you start to make progress in that, you have to do well, they present the option to do side quests. And if you're like, well, not for me, I'm gonna keep going with the main story for now. Maybe I'll come back to these later. You will run off, go back to the next main story icon, and it will tell you, oh, we need gold that you get from doing side quests. So backtrack back to the side quest board, take a side quest, do that like 8 times, and all of a sudden these optional side quests are now mandatory side quests. And in fact, they do that to you twice where, okay, you need 8 gold to progress the story. So you go do 4 side quests, you get your 8 gold. You come back, now you need 10 gold to progress the main story. Okay, you go do 5 more side quests and you get your 10 gold, and then you can finally start to move forward. But it's a big map, which is really nice because these environments are diverse and interesting and cool and very pleasant to look at. But I found myself backtracking so much, and you would take so the side quest board would have like 3 side quests you could do. Okay, I'll just pick those all up. I'll go knock them all out, and then I'll have my gold to go repair the kingdom. No, you can only take one at a time. So you take a side quest, you run 10 maps or screens to get to the side quest,
Mhm.
you do it. You have to run 10 screens back to the quest board to get another side quest to run 10 screens off another direction to get it. It's just like, please introduce fast travel into this world. There's very limited fast travel. And while I do love these environments, I don't love seeing them this over and over and over again for a side quest.
Well, or like have some of that happen after that side quest. Have somebody come up, or have
Right, right.
um, stuff right there. But yeah,
And
if you're
it's
not gonna do that, don't make it that far.
mhm. And it's one of those things, like, I think I remember saying this about Carrion. This is a solved problem. Like, games have already figured this out. You run off to do the side quest, and A, you take on multiple side quests at once for starters.
Yeah.
But if you can't do that, then you have a fast travel back to the quest board once you complete it. You go there, and Redgi thinks to himself, "Well, I should probably return to let them know that this is taken care of. Should I return now, or do I want to keep exploring?" And you just pick the option. If you want to keep exploring, you do that, and you run back manually later, or you fast travel back to the board. It's not that hard. It's something
Yeah.
that has been solved before, and it's really disappointing to see how much work they went into the visuals and crafting this entire world and all these really nice animations that they did. Like, and then I feel like the gameplay itself was an afterthought.
Yeah, they didn't spend the time with the actual controls and gameplay. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have bashed this gameplay enough. Let's move on to the story.
Okay.
I I enjoyed how it started off. I think Tales of Iron starts off strong with this, introduction to the kingdom, and then you're preparing for your trial by combat to show that you are a worthy rat to inherit the crown. And then things start getting dark fast. There's a
Mhm.
devastating attack, and all of these frogs come crashing through your kingdom, leveling it, and you need to start rebuilding. I think that was a very strong start. Did you enjoy the part of the story that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of it gets fleshed out pretty well.
Hmm.
That it's very story driven, which is nice, and I mean, it took me by surprise at how it started because I just thought, oh, okay, I'm going to become king, and then suddenly there's going to be this war with the frogs
Hmm.
again, and it just took a turn that I was not expecting.
Hmm.
So I think from the get go, that told me this was going to be a very intricate story
Hmm.
that would keep being played out. And I think what's helpful too is, we were saying there's a narrator who is explaining some stuff, but the narrator's not around the whole time. It's in certain parts where just he just needs to be there.
Hmm.
and that's nice because otherwise it's just a conversations. It's the unique slide whistle conversations that happen, and um, yeah, I think that the story was really well done and crafted very well. I think.
I agree. I think it was a very strong start. It did hit a kind of dull patch in the middle when I got to those side quests that I was
Mm.
already talking about, where it felt like it was kind of dragging on, and I wanted to progress the main story, but was forced to kind of do these side quests to help rebuild the castle and rescue. Not only do you have your big brother that you have to fight in the beginning, but basically every other main rat NPC in the castle is one of your brothers, and the brother that's a cook, the brother that's the blacksmith, you have to need to go and
Hmm.
save each of them after the frogs attack. And that seems to drag a little bit in the middle, where it felt like they were kind of padding it out with the side quests, and having to individually go and save each brother. Which I would have preferred to, like, let's go and deal with the frogs. Like, I want to see how that
Yeah.
progresses, and I bet that would be great. Only I'm not sure I'll ever get to it because of how fetch questy the mid game got.
The other thing that I kept thinking a little bit. I mean, I know he's rebuilding the kingdom, and they were attacked, but obviously there's a war at one point, and so you would
Hmm.
think that some of these citizens of the kingdom had fought before. Like, I thought that he was going to kind of rally a lot of like rat troops too,
Hmm.
but it sounds like it does stay mostly him. It's a solo adventure, and that's kind of interesting to me that they chose that when it's such a battle
I
heavy kingdom.
I
Yeah.
agree. It may have been, the raising the army was the next thing after where I left off. But it does feel like we really get into restoring the kingdom, which is probably important, but also there's a frog army that just leveled the entire kingdom. If we don't address it, then they're going to come right back through and stomp on us again. And I feel
Mhm.
like that is kind of what the place I was in, where yes, it's important to rebuild, but also we need to rebuild our defenses right now because there is a frog threat that is still out there. We haven't really addressed it. Um, I feel like they maybe didn't have a ton of story to tell. They had a very good story to tell, but they chose to drag it out a little more than they needed to. And I I think I am ready for my
Yeah.
final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts on this before we rate it?
um, no, I think that's the final thoughts that I have. Yeah,
Yeah, my
that I'm
last
ready
thought
for.
was this is probably the second game we've played that I either haven't beaten while we've been talking about, or uh plan to return to beat it later
Mm.
on. There's probably been five or so games that I'd like to go back to at some point when time
Mhm.
allows. Um and This is a game I was really intrigued by the story. I love the artwork, but the gameplay just got
Yeah.
in the way too much, so that I don't think I'm going to return to this one, despite the fact that I really love to see how it ends. I ended up watching just a little bit of it on YouTube just to kind of get a feel for what else was in the game, and I think I'm going to let it go at that. Would you like to
Mm.
toss up a rating, or shall I go first?
I feel like you've already started. That
Yeah.
might answer one part of the rating. Yeah, sure. I don't know if you want to work backwards and say the sequel thing, the
I mean,
whether you do a sequel or a
we usually
yeah,
do a thumbs up first, so we'll
yeah.
do it in the normal order. I'm gonna give
All
it
right.
one thumb up, I believe.
Okay.
Again, really big fan of how this game starts. Really big fan of the art and the choices they made in the world building. Um, it's one of those presentation gets two thumbs up, gameplay gets no thumbs up type thing. So I think I'm gonna
Yeah.
put it in the middle at one thumb up. How about you?
I'm gonna give it one as well, and it's the same reasons. It's I think this the story's good. There's something there that is really solid and different, and again, like we keep saying, it's very beautiful. So it has that going for it. But yeah, the gameplay. Oh, that it. If it had been just a little different, because it was just trying to beat so many of the same things over and over again, it just was not working for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then our follow-up question is always, would we purchase a sequel, a hypothetical Tales of Iron 2, where they have addressed some things, improved some things, and are telling a new story? Um, do you think you're gonna go for Tales of the Iron 2 if it ever comes around?
Now, you said something earlier
Uh-huh.
that actually intrigued me. That I would like to see a very different game in this style. So it was
Hmm.
like that. It was the joke about, well, he's not a farmer, he's
Oh
a king.
yeah.
But I almost would, like, I almost would be okay, like all of this style
Hmm.
as a different type of RPG. I guess it wouldn't be action necessarily, but I guess in some ways it could be. Like
Yeah.
I would like to see just something different, and I feel like there could still be possibly some frustration with the controls, but it's possible that it wouldn't be as bad of a frustration if it were like farming and you had to go from village to village or something. I don't know. So I if it were the Tales of Iron universe, if they were
Uh-huh.
a different game, not necessarily like a direct sequel, I would actually look into it. I think I would maybe play it at some point,
Uh,
probably
so
on sale.
so that's probably an
But
on-sale
yeah,
purchase for you. I think I'm going to say not for me. I'm gonna let the sequel go
okay.
by because I don't know if I trust them to address the gameplay issues. Like
Mm,
they obviously know world building and visuals and sound and those sorts of things. I don't know if they've shown enough care for gameplay aspects that I think they will improve on a second go. So short of it being just astoundingly reviewed, which Tales of Iron was well reviewed game. Um, it may be that it's just not the game for me, um,
or me. I
or,
mean,
or
yeah.
eith- either of these particular brothers. Um, but I, I don't understand the appeal, honestly, and I think I will let the sequel go and let it be for those that are more into this sort of thing. So would you like to split the difference and give it a half point, or have I swayed you down to my no points for the purchase?
Um, I think it'd still be give it a half point.
Half point it is. All
I
right.
think. Yeah.
So that lands Tales of Iron at 2.5 out of 6. Not quite into a respectable, but very, very close to a respectable score, with the 1-2 being a little disappointing, 3-4 being pretty cool, and the 5-6 being astounding, generally speaking. Um, if you're a big Souls like gamer, hardcore combat, incredible difficulty, and that's for you. This might be the game for you. It is not the game for
Hmm.
me personally. Let's see, what else do we have? So, as we mentioned at the start, Chris is getting married. Yay! Yay! It's going very exciting,
Huzzah.
very stressful, but very exciting time. So we will have our next main episode out around Halloween. So a little bit of a wait for that
Hmm.
one, and that will be Curse to Golf, which
Hmm.
is a challenging golf-like
Indeed.
adventure where every shot counts. Players are tasked with making it out of golf purgatory to become a golfing legend with insane hazards, otherworldly power-ups, and tons of replayability. Will you make it back alive, or will you forever be cursed to golf? That is a horrible write-up, but it sounds very fun. The one thing I'm really excited about this golf game is it also has tags for being a dungeon crawler and a roguelike, which are just a very strange combination of golf, dungeon crawler, and roguelike. So I'm very excited to see what in the world this game is. It's got a little bit of a spooky theme for Halloween coming up,
Yeah,
and
and it's a
that'll be
golf game,
fun.
which we tend to play
Yeah,
from
yes.
time to time. Apparently.
Two Brothers Golf a Game is returning to your podcast feed soon. And in the meantime, we have recorded a pair of Chrono Trigger Recap Pod episodes to keep something in our feed while we are away taking care of Chris's love life. Hopefully successfully. We don't want to come back next time and tell him that you did not successfully get married. So we're going to give it our all to make this
No,
happen.
that should not be a thing. Yeah.
So, couple pairs of Chrono Trigger recap pods coming up, with Curse to Golf coming in October. As usual, you can send questions to twobrothersPlayAGame@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter and YouTube at twobrothersPAG. Chris, of course, has some live streams on YouTube, as well as our podcast episode with now video elements on YouTube. So you can see a little bit of gameplay while you listen to the podcast. Though, let's be honest, you've made it to this point, so you'd have to probably want to do that for the next episode. I'm sure we're very entertaining, but maybe not 2 times listen entertaining. Maybe we should try harder so we are 2 times listen entertaining. But that is
is that like our gameplay is not that good?
I guess, yeah. We're a 1 thumbs up podcast, let's be honest.
Just for gameplay.
Yeah. Please review us on iTunes, but you can lie and say we're a 5-star podcast on iTunes. You have my permission. That would be super appreciated. And then, Chris, I just have one last question for you. Do you think I made a mountain out of a molehill concerning the Tales of Iron gameplay?
No, because mountains are nice.
This is the life. That's decent.
All right.